I really highlight for the reader that everyone's on their own journey. So don't compare the first part of your race to the middle or the end of someone else's. It's your journey and yours alone.
Welcome to the Measure Success podcast, where we feature top leaders on how they measure success in their business and life. Now, let's learn from their experiences.
Carl J. Cox here, host of the Measure Success podcast, where I talk with top leaders about effective strategies that inspire success. This episode is brought to you by 40 Strategy. 40 Strategy is built to make strategy work for small to medium-sized businesses and organizations by helping them design a world-class strategic plan, but more importantly, help keeping them accountable to actually get it done. To learn more, go to 40strategy.com. I encourage you for a limited time offer. We have our book available, Lost at CEO, as you know, on Amazon.com, BarnesandNoble.com, and Audible. But if you want a signed copy, you can actually get that for free. Just send me an email at carljcox, CARLJCOX, at 40strategy.com, and we'll get that sent out to you. With that, I'm really excited to introduce our guests. First of all, I'd like to do a shout out to Nick Hutchinson. He's from Book Thinkers, and we actually ended up connecting. I heard Cody speak at this event and followed up with him afterwards. Like, Cody, can you come on our show? We had a talk a little bit earlier. And he was like, yes, let's go ahead and get that done. So here we are today and getting record that. Cody Adent is really great story. He wrote the book, Winning the Moment, and it's a very inspirational story. He has always had an entrepreneurial spirit and one that motivated his desire to skip college and creating his first business at 19 years old. He's currently the president and CFO of Vibrant Management, a hospitality management company based in St. George, Utah. And their mission is to create a place where dreams become reality. And they also build brands, digital footprints for properties that are ready to be industry leaders. With that, Cody, welcome to the Measure Success podcast.
Oh, Carl, thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So let's go back to, actually, I want to talk to something I thought was pretty cool at the very beginning. So I'm going to interrupt the typical thing of when we get started and talk about your business. You said something that was really fascinating as we were getting ready. You said you went to a speaking course and you were like, you thought you were dialed in, and you talked with a bunch of experts, and they're like, there's more to learn. Just briefly, tell us about that experience and why that kind of blew you away of how much more you could do.
Yeah, so since my book came out January of last year, one of my aspirations with the book and really my whole life was to be able to be a motivational and a professional speaker. And so, of course, this is a new craft for me, and I love and I'm fascinated with, individual improvement. It's why I love sports like golf, because you can always get better, right? And so I was pursuing different avenues in fact, it was at the Book Thinkers event. So Jeanette Branais, who did The Power of the Pause, so I could tell she was tactfully skilled in speaking. And so when the event was over, I went and asked her, do you have any advice for me, any recommendations? And she actually referred me to Heroic Coaching, which is done by Amy and Michael Port. And they are both theater professionals. They have their IMDb pages and have been on the TV screens and whatnot. But they also have this huge background in theater. The MFA's from, Michael's is from NYU and Amy's is from Yale Theater. And so they taught this theater piece of talking, right? Which is really what draws you in. In fact, when I was there, we went to New York early and I went to my first ever Broadway play, and I didn't want to go. The person I was with was like, yeah, let's do it. And I was like, that's not really my thing. I don't think I'll enjoy it, but you've been so great and gone to all these sporting events with me, so I'll go with you. And it was the best money I ever spent. I was blown away. The actors pulled you in and I can really tell if I'm engaged or not by do I want to look at my phone. Right? If I'm watching a TV show at home and I look at my phone for Twitter or something, I know now this show is no longer engaging me. It's not worth my time. I couldn't have cared what time it was while I was watching this Broadway performance. And so it was the skill of those actors that was so fascinating. And another reason I wanted to go is I wanted to really buy into this theater experience. I went to some comedy shows as well, and they just taught you how to use the stage and how to talk with a purpose and the ability to change the way you breathe and the way you use your vocal tones and to create urgency and understanding through the way that you change your pitch. And there was just this multitude of skills that I didn't realize. And also something I really took for granted is that being in sales for my whole life, I can just talk on a whim. So I never really rehearsed. Like, so the speech you saw me give at Book Thinkers, I didn't rehearse that necessarily. I just did it. And they taught you how to rehearse as well and how to really build a speech. And there are all these components that I just didn't understand. And so I was telling you, Carl, when we started, I probably thought, as a speaker, I was about 75% of the way to like being the speaker I wanted to be. But after these 2 days, I realized like I'm legitimately probably at about 15%, which some people would think like, oh, that's so disappointing. But for me, I'm like, nah, that's incredible because I have so much opportunity to get better.
There's so many things I'd love to highlight, but just one of the small pieces is just that little part of you. By the way, there's a reason why you're on this podcast today is because I thought you did a great job speaking.
Thank you.
Right. So, and I've listened to a lot of presentations. There's like, no, that was pretty darn good. And you've got a great story. And I'd love to have you on the podcast. And you self-reflected and you realized, wow, I'm only 15% of the way there. I'm going to go to like books being sold. I think they say that if you're in the, like literally the 10th percentile, you're at 10%, you've only sold 200 books. Like that's like the reality of like, they see these average numbers, but it just shows you when you get to 9% and you get to 8% and you get to 7% and you get to 6%, it's like exponentially better your skills and your details. And I think that's what I kind of took out of what you said there, which is you could think you're good at something, but to be great, and like you were mentioning, you were lucky enough to be at the Joel Embiid 70 point scoring, right? Or was 70 or 74?
He scored 70 that night. Yeah.
Yeah, 70. So that's extraordinary, right? That was like the fourth, I think, highest scoring in NBA history.
Yeah, and only 8 NBA players have ever scored over 70 points in the entire history of the NBA. So, it's truly got to witness greatness.
Right. And you just realize, like, that is so hard. And then you think about what does it take, right? What does it take to get that good to score that many points and to be great at business? Which, all right, we'll transition to your book, Winning the Moment. What is the key takeaway that you were trying to get across when you wrote your book?
I think if we're going to boil it down to one takeaway, it's that you're in control of your life, good, bad, or indifferent. In fact, I was just on a podcast with a friend of mine yesterday, and he's a real high performer, high achiever. And he had said like, what's your advice for people out there who are struggling? Because for some people it's really, it's really hard. And I said, do you believe that? And he was like, well, yeah. I was like, no, but do you really believe that? Like if I took all the things you had away from you and you had to start over again, do you think you could do it? And he's like, well, of course I could. I was like, right. So you don't actually believe that. You say that for the people who think that about themselves so they don't feel bad. But the problem is by doing that, we're actually not helping them, we're hurting them. It's just like when, parents have a kid who's addicted to drugs and they keep supporting them and ultimately it allows them to continue to do the drugs until they can't anymore, but it's hard not to because you feel bad. But at the end of the day in life, we are in control of our destiny. And so regardless of what your situation is, you have the ability to get out of it. And for some people it may take longer, right? But ultimately it starts with deciding what you want and then building your habits along the way. And I think that's the beauty of Winning the Moment is that I really highlight for the reader that everyone's on their own journey. So don't compare the first part of your race to the middle or the end of someone else's. It's your journey and yours alone. And you don't have to let society tell you where you're going. You decide for yourself. And I think so many people go into life thinking there's all these preconceived notions as to what success looks like or what they should be after. But ultimately, all that matters is what you want to be after. And if you're in pursuit of those things, then you're going to be more fulfilled, happier, and you're more likely to get there because it's about your purpose, not somebody else's.
So let's go to that beginning part of somebody's trying to figure out what their purpose should be. So they're excited to win the moment. They want to go back to, once again, these points of success when you're speaking at your best and you come off the stage and you're just like, I nailed that, right? And you didn't just nail it. Like that's the response from the audience. You finished a book and you write it and you're just like, I nailed that book, right? I just did exactly what I did and it ends up becoming a bestseller, right? And so you have these like promising, exciting things. But there's people who don't know what that is, right? They don't know what should be that passion or that idea or that concept. When you're working with people, how do you help them discern the what?
Well, I think that part of it is giving yourself the grace to understand your purpose is going to evolve over the course of your life, right? And so if you're listening to this today, the purpose you come up with over the course of the next little bit as you work on it won't be your purpose in perpetuity. You're going to evolve as your life evolves. But I think that as a people, so Vishen Lakhani says this, an incredible author, Buddha and the Badass, six phase meditation. I can't remember what his other one is, but awesome. He's the head of Mind Valley, and he says that people have an ability to overestimate what we can achieve in 1 year, but underestimate what we can achieve in 3 years. And I think that's true, and that's why New Year's resolutions don't work. And so I think that I want you to have that goalpost, or like Jim Collins' good to great right over your shoulder there. You want that big, hairy, audacious goal that's down in the future that you don't have, like it's a 50-50 if you're going to make it or not. And you want to know what that is, so you have that item on the horizon, but then live in the moment. So have all of your decisions that you make on a daily basis be reflective of, if I do these things every day, I'll end up at this place, but don't live at that place, because if you live in somewhere in the future, that's not a reality, right? So if you're focused too much on the future, or you're worrying too much about the past, you're wasting time, because none of that is real. The only thing that's real is right now. That's why they call it the present. And so I would say set that milestone, but then make sure that all of your habits daily align to what that milestone is that you want to achieve.
I love it how it's a simple little play in words, right? The present, right? It is a gift. It is a present of where we're at the moment. But interesting, here my involvement is strategic planning, execution, and helping organizations grow in the future 3-5 years down the road. And you said something super interesting there, right? Is if you don't enjoy that moment of that process, and by the way, it's hard work, right? Anybody who's been a part of that push, right, to help build a company or become a great team or whatever it might be, it's hard work. But when you start seeing success and you start seeing positive results right along the way, and you recognize the work you're doing has purpose, there should be joy in that. The hard part is, Cody, and I'm sure you've seen this, is when people get to the top and they've accomplished their goal, they're unhappy, right? They're like, oh, I made it all the way to the top of the mountain. And it's like, I'm not any happier, right? So you're touching on this key thing about winning today, right? Winning the moment, winning literally the present of where we speak as we're talking through this podcast. What do you suggest or recommend? And like which in your book, how do you suggest and recommend to people, this is how you win the now?
Well, I think so. There's a part of my book that says, stop looking for I'll be happy when moments, because the reason that those people are unhappy is because they predicated their happiness on a future event. And what your subconscious hears when you say that or think that is, we are not able to be happy now, right? Because I've already established that my happiness is based on hitting this milestone. And so you spend all of this time being unhappy, thinking that this euphoric moment is going to happen, and then you'll be happy in perpetuity. But it doesn't work like that, because even like as you talk about giving a good speech, what I've learned in my life is that is life is peaks and valleys, right? It's not a steady climb to the top of Everest and then you die. Because what happens is, like at Book Thinkers, I gave my speech, I felt really happy after, but now the next speech I start back at the bottom and I got to work my way up to it, right? So if I said like, I'll be happy when I give a good speech, well, that happiness isn't going to carry me on forever. It's kind of like saying, I'll be full when I eat. Well, yeah, you'll be filled up, but you're going to be hungry again, right? And happiness is the same way. You got to keep filling that bucket. And so I would say, don't try and predicate your happiness on something that you can't attain currently. And that's really the idea behind winning the moment, is you've got these bracelets. And so if you're happy by reading a book in the morning, or having that cup of coffee and spending time with your spouse, or getting up when your alarm goes off, or exercising, then you give yourself that visual reminder like, oh, I did my workout today. I'm going to move my bracelet from this wrist to that wrist. I'm going to register. I'm going to get that dopamine hit, and I've got that visual representation on my wrist of my progress for the day. Now, the thing I want to be cautious of is that we're not in pursuit of perfection. It's not about being perfect every day. It's about making progress. And so if today I wasn't as good as I wanted to be, and I only moved 7 of my 10 bracelets, that's not a loss. It's an opportunity. And tomorrow I can strive for 10.
I love what you described there. And I love that striving component, but also that recognition, right, of that. Well, once again, I think we're really being honest with ourselves. We can't really get to perfection, right?
No.
We can make up perfection at times. I got 100% on a test as an example, right? So I scored perfect on that particular test. But that was a very discrete clear, concise thing. When it comes to most things, which are frankly more ambiguous, right? Who's to say you can't be better, right? That you couldn't have done a little bit more, or a little bit more effort, or yeah, you maybe even broke a world record, but maybe if you would have just, pushed your arm out a little bit further, could you have gotten like farther, or your chest a little bit further across the finish line? Could you have done better, right? And so the reality is, right, we never do hit that. That is super hard, I think, in today's culture, right? There is such this need of perfectionism.
In fact, I had a thought on what you're saying about building, right? And like in that pursuit of perfection. And you think of like LeBron James going back to basketball. He's been the best basketball player for so many years. And it's not, if he didn't continue to put in the work every day, he wouldn't be able to stay in that position. Right. So it's even when you're the best in the entire world at something, if he took 1 year off, it would take him so long. And he may never at this point in his career, if he took a year off, ever get back to being the best. In fact, there was an advertisement. I want to say I think it was 30, 40 years ago. Burger King had the most market share in like the fast food business, burger business. And so they're like, oh, we don't have to spend money on marketing anymore because we have the number one market share. So they stopped for like a month. McDonald's passed them, and they never got back ahead.
I'd never heard that story. That's super fascinating.
You just can't stop. You got to always keep going. That's what's interesting about golf is that to get better at golf, you first have to get worse. Because let's say you're shooting 100 and you finally break 100. Well, you still have habits that aren't as good as a golfer who shoots 70. So you go and you work on your swing and you change maybe your short game is different now. Now you're actually trying to target the pin versus like just getting onto the green. And so as you target that pin, you're going to skull it a couple times. And so it's so hard in golf because I got down to where I was in the 90s, then I was in the 80s, and then as I worked to improve my game, then my score would balloon by like 10 strokes around because I was trying new things that I wasn't as good at. So I was better just using my not so skilled attempts than I was trying to use more skilled attempts. And I think that's a great indication of life is that oftentimes to get better, we have to get worse, right? Because even as I was listening to those speaker coaches, I have a talk in 2 weeks in Vegas, and I was like, man, I don't even know how I'm going to do it anymore because I feel like now with what I know, I don't know how to do what I used to do. And I'm almost going to be worse because if I try these new things, I'm not going to be great at it the first time. I'll be better just doing it I've always done. But I know in order to elevate my ability, I'm going to have to be okay not being as good for a while.
Isn't that the truth? I remember, kind of emphasize your golf point that you said there is I was golfing in a particular, I'd never taken lessons before. I took my first lessons ever. And it was not a high-end golfer. He was like literally was a taxi cab driver, and on the side he was like teaching golf. And so this was not a big club resort. This was a small little 9-hole place where they happened to have a place there where you can practice a practice range. And so I remember I went through and I was really bad, like really bad. But I would go to this Bandon Dunes, which if people know golf, it's one of the nicest golf resorts in the U.S. And I just, because I got invited by my father-in-law and brother-in-law, I got kind of dragged along. I was like, hey, you get to play. And I remember one year I was so bad on my back. I had a bad back. And the golfer, you're so bad. I just want you to do this half swing, put your right foot all the way back, and just follow through. And sure enough, I was able to hit the ball like 185 down the middle, which was good enough for what I needed, just so I could play, if that makes sense, right?
Yeah, I do. It does make sense.
And so moving on from that, but the interesting part is I started getting more confident. It was like, oh, I'm feeling better, and then I'd start adjusting and changing it. I didn't through, but the really funny part was I remember I came back from one of these lessons to a lesson. It was like the third or fourth lesson I was going into. And he was like, well, what did you do this past week to get better? And I said, well, I played 3 times. He said, you did what? He said, I played 3 times. He said, you did what again? He said, you realize I have a reputation to hold up. This is a taxi cab driver. He's got to call me out. He's like, I have a reputation to hold up. And if you don't practice, you will never be able to do it properly on the course because you'll go back to your old habits.
Yeah. He's totally right. It's funny too, because I thought after that, they talk so much about preparation to be a speaker, right? There's so much work leading up to the talk, which I never did, right? I never did the work. And I had a friend who went with me, who's also a speaker. And I said, it's so interesting because I grew up playing sports. And so I know in my heart of hearts, like playing sports my whole life, we would practice 5 days a week and play 1 game. right? So it was 5-1 and then that's like actually practice. That doesn't count me being in a gym, getting up shots, being on my driveway, getting up shots, playing one-on-one. Like I'm just talking the organized practice of the team. So I probably practiced 15-1 to games, but yet in this new arena, I'm doing zero practice and one game. And so it really helped open my eyes to like, I know better. I just wasn't doing it. Part of why I wasn't doing it, I didn't know how to effectively do it, which is why it's always worth investing in a coach or someone like yourself, right? Like being a consultant for businesses, you don't know what you don't know. And sometimes you need that direction. And anyone who I've ever met who's an achiever in whatever field it is that they want to be an achiever in, that they want to be the best skier or the best business person, the best speaker, best writer, best author, they always invest in themselves. They always have coaches.
Yeah, it's Darren Hardy says, and he I think got it from Zig Ziglar. It's like, if you aren't putting in 10%, they recommend put 10% of what you make into education and training, right? Because it's going to make you that much better. And during his growth, Darren Hardy in particular, he talks about his income was doubling every year as a result of putting into that. And he said, yeah, it got so ridiculous. He had over $1 million a year he was putting into. And so it's like, obviously you have to rethink things, when you're getting to that point of like just point education.
Yeah, I mean, LeBron spends $1 million a year on just maintaining his body, just physical fitness.
But when you're making, well, and it's probably in his particular thing, right? I have no idea what his salary is. Let's say it's 30 million. That's not that much when you think about it. In his right. comparison, 1 to 30, and then of course he's doing more than that, and never mind the time he's spending, right, to train and to practice,
right.
Not just actually making himself better. All right, so let's pull back for a minute into just your core. We're going a little bit of reverse here, but I think this is appropriate for this particular discussion. Tell us about your core business. What do you do? What's the core things you're helping to deliver and help make a difference for others?
So, as you mentioned, President and CFO of Vibrant Management. So we're a hospitality management company. We specialize in the boutique hospitality space. So I think our property with the most rooms now only has like maybe 40-ish rooms, right? And so we specialize in that small boutique niche property, something really unique that's super fun to stay at. And then we support them in a wide variety of ways. So some properties are full management where we really take over everything. We even have a program called Virtual GM where we have a team of individuals who make and take all the reservations. So if you're calling a property, we're answering the phone. We're handling all your communication pre-arrival, during arrival, and post-arrival, as well as like handling all of your finances. We've got clients who are just on revenue management where all we do is focus on the rates because we want to have dynamic pricing. So as you sell more rooms, if you have 40 rooms, supply and demand, room 1 is less valuable than room 40, right? Because you have less rooms available. So your 40th room better not be sold for the same price as your first room. So ensuring that we're executing dynamic pricing with consumer demand. And then we also have our marketing arm where we take care of all the marketing efforts for all the properties. We try and get them at least a 5 times return on their ad spend. And what we realized as Vibrant's a place where dreams become reality, we had a couple team members who wanted to have some ownership in a company and wanted to create their entrepreneurial journey. And it was too late in the game for them to be able to jump on Vibrant's train. But I did say I will happily support you in whatever endeavor that you want to do. And so just last year, we created Vibrant Marketing because with our company at Vibrant, we don't go outside of our niche. So even though we could, right, like we do branding and websites and all of that, but if you're not in the hospitality space, we won't work with you because it takes away our focus. And you stick to your niche, you get rich. I don't know who said that, but it's a pretty good little phrase. And so we created Vibrant Marketing, which now can market for anybody. And those 2 individuals were able to acquire ownership in that. And so that's been really exciting. We're up to like 35 different clients that we're servicing there now, which is amazing. And then as we're doing this, we realized, there was a real gap in the amount of people who had good websites or a website they could afford. And so we've been working on a coding software that will allow AI to inform and build your website for you. So it's like 5 steps or less. You have a fully customized WordPress website. that will give you everything that you need. And our hope is to keep that, under $400. And so that's going to open us up to so many more opportunities. And of course, if you have a business that you want to, have it be revenue producing, then you're going to need a website to do that. And you're going to need to market that website. So once the website's created, then it'll create an opportunity for us to have a discussion about SEO and hosting and maintenance and marketing and content creation, all of those great things. And so that'll create a new funnel of opportunity for those companies.
I love it how you had a couple people who were expressing an interest in entrepreneurship. You're like, okay, we got a gap here, but let's see what else we can do, right? And so you found this new opportunity. It reminded me very much. The book, if people haven't read it, is Stake in the Outcome by Jack Stack is the name of the book, and he talks about exactly. And The Great Game of Business is actually the more well-known book, the first book that he did, but he talks exactly what you were talking about, Cody, right? Which is, how do we help get people who are willing to take some risk and get it rewarded as a result, right? To be involved with stuff and get more ownership, right? And I think it's awesome. I applaud you for making that effort to, like, once again, effectively create a new company that's outside of your core business, right? To do that. That's awesome.
Yeah, and we just leveraged our name because Vibrant has built a pretty good brand equity point, and so it's Vibrant Management, so we just created Vibrant Marketing so we could leverage some of our branding capacities and our name within the community, and so it was able to be an easy transition. And then now they obviously execute all the marketing efforts on the hospitality side through the Vibrant Marketing team. So it's been really fun and exciting to see them grow. And I think if you're a good leader, you should always be teaching your people how to leave your company and be more successful, right? So I don't want anyone who works for me to work for me in perpetuity because I want to create opportunities for them. It's like one of my favorite employees, his name was Kyle, and he was our social media manager, and he started as an intern for us while he was in college, and now he just started his own company called Rambling Media, which does all of this incredible video content creation. And it was so cool to see him build up this skill set and understanding of business while working for us, and then leverage that to create his own company, which is just so fun to watch.
That is awesome. And I do want to go back to what you mentioned beforehand, the product I love it how you are here. Here you have this business where you make money helping people with websites and building them as part of your core business, but you found, because of AI, right, you're finding a way to create tools to be able to make it so it's as cheap as $400, right, to help create a website. What a game changer that is for businesses.
Oh, it's going to be so exciting, and it's super easy. You'll put in your business name, and then if you don't have a summary, right, because writing is difficult, then you can even use AI within that tool to say, here's the bullet points about my business, and AI will spit out what your summary could be, and then you just it's like plug and play. You pick what pictures you want. If you've got colors already, you can put in your hex codes. If you have a typography you want to use, you can put that in. And so it will be custom to your business if your business has those things already. If it doesn't, we'll do it for you. But I'm just over the moon excited because, especially for those entrepreneurs who are just starting out, or people have a side hustle that they're trying to have replace their day job, this is going to create so much opportunity for those people.
So from the perspective of measuring success in your own business, how do you measure it today?
So one thing that we did at Vibrant that really changed our trajectory was we invested in EOS. Are you familiar with the Entrepreneurial Operating System? So
Yep.
we committed to that a few years ago, and that's been huge because we kind of just started. It's funny. It's kind of like I talked about not practicing as being a speaker. There's all these things I know like businesses should do, and I would advocate our clients to do so, but yet we didn't, right? It's that classic thing where like a marketing company doesn't market themselves because they're busy marketing their clients' companies. And so we really didn't put parameters on it. And so now we have what's called a VTO, which is a Vision Traction Organizer. So that has our 1 year, like all of our goals for the 1 year on it, where we see our business in 3 years, and then what our 10-year target is. And then that evolves, of course, every year. And then we break that into rocks. And so every quarter we have rocks, as individuals, company rocks, individual rocks that we're working towards that should take, more than 7 days, but less than 90. And then that also has our measurables, so like what's our revenue going to be, what's our profit going to be, what's a big milestone we're going to achieve, and then there's individual rocks as well, and then we have weekly level 10s where we're monitoring like our weekly performance, our to-dos, and so that's been incredible. It's been an absolute game changer, and all the businesses that I have ownership in, I implement EOS, and that's how I operate all of them.
So I'm curious, so you get the measures, but then, and you have those measures to help measure success, but there are multiple measures, if that makes sense. What is to you the most important metric that you're like, hey, by doing this, we know we're being successful in what we're trying to get done?
Well, I'd probably have to say profit because I can only pay my bills with cash, So it's like we've got to be profitable in order to continue to execute as a business. And of course, there's all those requirements that are in place, but we really, are financially driven and have a focus on our output and our input and making sure that those things are aligned. And when we watch every penny, and that's not just for us, but for our clients as well. And so, we operate to a budget and then we project out for the quarters and for the years. And so we're always having a keen eye on that because at the end of the day, that's what makes it all go around.
Yep, that's good. That's great. Great answer for that. All right, so now we're going to flip kind of back and forth as we've been going with and talk more about your personal side. I'm curious now, what habits do you do on a consistent basis so you can do your best and peak performance on a daily, every day?
So I think the one thing that is critically important, there's so many things out there, right? Like you've got your ice baths and you've got your breathing and you've got your meditation and you've got your exercise, and all of those things are good and all of those things are going to make an impact on your life. But I'd say that don't feel like you're behind if you're not doing all of those things, because not everyone is in the same part of their lives. So like we just had a big transition with our company, and so now my routines are different because we've made this huge investment in Vibrant. And so my morning routine, like yesterday, which was the first, was going over all of my clients' finances at 6 o'clock in the morning. I would have loved it to have been what it used to be, which was reading my 10 pages, doing my meditation, doing my exercise. But now I'm in a different space in my life because of this big investment that we've made. And so I think give yourself grace if you're listening to this, that based on what's going on in your life, those activities are going to change. But the one consistent that never changes for me is quality time with my family. So like no matter what, making sure that I have the time to spend with my wife and kids. And so like yesterday, for example, yesterday was still the first, right? Yesterday was still the first. So last evening, one of the properties that I do consulting work with wanted to go over their P&L, and it was like 5:20. And I told him, like, I'm sorry, I'm taking my kids and my family we've got a university here, Utah Tech University, to the basketball game. I was like, we're going to have to do it tomorrow. And he was like, well, I can't wait till tomorrow. I was like, well, you can do it tonight then. But I'm going to go to this game with my family, And so really making sure that you set that time aside. And I think the most important thing is that I always try to be where I'm at. And that sounds silly because it would be obvious, but so many people leave work and then they get home and they're still on their work mind, right? And so like even for me, sometimes I'll get stuck on a call coming home. Well, I won't walk into the house until I'm off of that phone call, because what my kid doesn't know, who hasn't seen me in 8 hours, is that I'm on that call. And so they're just thinking like, oh, dad, right? And so then I would get frustrated at them because I'm on a work call, but it's not their responsibility to understand my objectives. It's mine. And so I won't get into the house until that call is finished. And then once I'm home, I'm home. Now, if I have other work that extends into the evening, I'll wait till they go to sleep before I work on that. But, if my wife's up and available, then I'm going to wait for her as well, because just like my kids need time, so does my wife. And so, I try to be where I'm at. So if I'm at work, I'm also not worrying about what my kids and wife are doing. I'm focused on the task at hand.
I think you said something really interesting there, which I appreciated, which is, once again, there's the well-known habits, right, that we'd love to be doing. But there's seasons when you are once again, season can't do it forever, right? Because otherwise you're going to get burnt out. But there's seasons where you do have to step up. You do have to put additional hours into it, and it will eat into your daily habits. And I know there's some people screaming at us, going, no, you can't do it. It's like there are only so many hours in the day. And if you have a family, right, and if you have other things that are going on, that's going to take the other part of it. Right, you're that's going to be part of your evening, and part of the difference of when I go home, there's other things going on. Right, that is not my that needs to be my priority. I like how you said that. It's like I got to get off my phone call to get back re-engaged what's taking place. And so I think that was a really sage advice of recognizing that there's seasons and times of what you're going to do, not you're going to do, and how do you build up to your next perhaps physical goal that you're trying to do, or whatever it might be. Right, that's more of a physical thing, right, or a spiritual thing, or whatever it might be, right, mental thing that you're trying to do to help you out, educational. But yeah, there's other times you have to fill it, like if you're in the tax season business, right? If you're preparing tax returns, you gotta work right during tax season. You're gonna have to put in those extra hours because April 15th is gonna happen, and for others it's not, and so otherwise you have to go through that. So I really appreciate that advice you had there. So love to ask this kind of final question here. So how do you now measure success in your personal life?
Well, I think the way that I measure success is universal. It's not just in my personal life. It's just the way that I deem success. And for me, it's being able to do what I want, when I want, with who I want to do it with. And so ultimately it boils down to freedom. And the reason that I just have that universal definition versus like my success personally and my success professionally is here is because it's the same way professionally. Like if what I'm doing for a living doesn't allow me the freedom to do the things that I want to do when I want to do them with who I want to do them with, like today, it's the middle of my day. But I've got the freedom and autonomy in my schedule to do a podcast with you, right? But if I was working in a condition that would not allow that or wouldn't allow me to go to that basketball game with my kids on last evening or not allow me to coach my kids' sporting events or go to my daughter's dance recitals, well, that would no longer be worth it to me, regardless of what they would compensate me for, right? Because it used to be when I started out, when I was young, it was all financially driven. But as I've evolved, I've realized it's way more about the freedom to execute my life in the way that I want versus the compensation that comes along with it.
Yeah, I love your answer there, how you communicate, talked about that, and also recognizing once again of things, you said this multiple times in this podcast, you will evolve and things will change depending on what stage you're in your life.
Yeah.
And so once again, those are in the beginning. Well, I mean, I may have said this to other people in the audience beforehand. Here I am in strategic planning and execution. I didn't know what strategy meant until I was 30 years old and a CFO.
Yeah.
And it literally took me a couple of years to like initially figure it out because my CEO at the time kept on saying strategy. And I was like, I'm just trying to get the books done. Right. It's like, I'm just trying to get the information. What do you mean strategy? And so that was an example like of a season where I was just trying to learn my skill versus learn how to work on the skill. Right. How to be better at it.
That's the evolution of business, is that so often we get stuck working in the business and we never take the time to work on it. Right. And you're really going to progress once you can work on your business versus just being in your business.
That's right. Cody, what is obviously, once again, we recommend for people to purchase your book, Winning the Moment. What is a book that you've read? You've mentioned a couple actually in this podcast. What is a book that you've read that really has inspired you?
Well, the one that kickstarted my journey into self-development was Think and Grow Rich, an incredible book, T. Harv Eker. It really helped me mold some of my beliefs around the mental capacity of financial improvement, right? And so that was one that really got my juices flowing. I love The Alchemist by Paulo Coelho. That's probably my favorite all-time book. It talks about the universe and this. I won't spoil it for the people who haven't read it yet, but the storyline is amazing and one of my absolute favorites. And then you've got your classics like The Four Agreements. You Can't Go Wrong. All these books right here, if you're watching, this is Malcolm Gladwell. He's my favorite author. Outliers really completely shifted my belief on so many things. What I loved about it is that it really helped establish that anyone can be great if you put in the work, right? There's a mathematical equation to become an expert, and it's 10,000 hours at any given activity, which is so reassuring to understand that if you want to be great, you can. You just have to put in the work. So often people want to be great and take a shortcut, but the math doesn't change. It's 10,000 hours, So if I wanted to be an incredible violinist, I now know I could do that. I would just have to work at it every day for 8 hours a day for 5 years to do so, right? And so that's the decision. Do you really want to be an expert at that thing? But if you want to be, you can, and I think that gives you back the power. So those are a couple of my favorites.
Cody, how can people connect and learn more about what you're doing?
The easiest way really is you could just go into Google and type Cody Adent, CODYADENT, and that's going to open up a treasure trove of opportunities to connect with me in different capacities. Of course, you've got the book, you've got my podcast as well, Winning the Moment, and then the social channel I'm most active on is Instagram, which is also just Cody Adent, Cody_Adent. And so yeah, if you just go into Google and type that, it'll get you connected however you like to connect the most.
Cody, I'm so glad we connected from the Book Thinkers event back in Columbus, Ohio in 2023. It's been a pleasure to have you on the Measure Success podcast today.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Carl. This was great.
Absolutely. To everyone who's listening, I encourage you to go out once again, take a look at Cody's information. It's a great book, Winning the Moment, and you could tell he has been on this journey being an entrepreneur and finding ways to continue to grow that. So I think it's a great thing. And plus, he's now developing great products with his continued expanding universe. So I recommend that you go out, learn more about Cody, what he's doing. As we always like to say, wishing you the very best at measuring your success. Have a great day.
Thanks for listening to the Measure Success podcast. We'll see you again next time to learn from the best. Remember to subscribe now to get future episodes.